Yo, what's good, everyone? This is Ayo Boxing from Adipa, and we're here to talk about why Canelo Alvarez should fight David Benavidez next instead of waiting for Dimitri Bivol. As we all know, David Benavidez just beat Caleb Plant and is now the WBC interim champion at 168, making him the official mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, the undisputed champion at 168. Benavidez has been Canelo's mandatory for a while now, but there wasn't a lot of pressure for Canelo to fight Benavidez. There were fans and some current and former boxers that wanted to see that fight, and the Benavidez camp wanted Canelo, but for the most part, Canelo was given a pass since he's the cash cow in the face of boxing. He can do what he wants. But with this win over Caleb Plant, the demand for Canelo versus Benavidez is at an all-time high, and the majority of the boxing world wants to see this fight next. And I think it's in the best interest for Canelo to fight Benavidez next, for legacy and money reasons. In my opinion, I believe Benavidez is a better legacy fight for Canelo than a Bivol rematch. Let me explain. Bivol is a top 10 pound for pound fighter. He's a great fighter, and he's been the WBA champion at light heavyweight for a long time. Canelo avenging his loss against Bivol would be tremendous for his legacy. But Bivol is a high risk opponent. Bivol dominated Canelo and took him to school in the first fight, and I can see the same thing happening in a rematch. Styles make fights, and Bivol's style is all wrong for Canelo. Canelo losing to Bivol twice could potentially hurt his legacy and put him on the decline. Benavidez, on the other hand, is a young, up-and-coming talent with a lot of hype and is seen as the next big thing in boxing. He's a good fighter, but he still hasn't proven that he's great yet, despite the win over Caleb Plant. Benavidez is a dangerous opponent, but it's a very winnable fight for Canelo, with less risk and more potential upside for legacy compared to Bivol. I see the Canelo-Benavidez situation very similar to the Floyd-Canelo situation back in 2013. In 2013, Floyd was the best fighter in the world, he was the cash cow, and he was the face of boxing, while Canelo was the young, up-and-coming talent that was seen as the next big thing in boxing, and it was the perfect time for those two to fight each other. And Floyd beat Canelo, and it was a great win for Floyd at that time. But the legacy of that win has aged beautifully for Floyd because Canelo will go on to dominate boxing for the next 10 years after that loss to Floyd. That win over Canelo is now considered one of the best wins on Floyd's resume. Canelo is now in a similar situation. If Canelo beats Benavidez now, it would be considered a great win on his resume. It would re-establish that Canelo is the best boxer in the world, and if Benavidez goes on to dominate, like what most people predict that he will do, that win will age beautifully for Canelo. However, if Canelo fights Bivol next, and ends up losing to Bivol in the rematch, and then fights Benavidez after that, the chances of Canelo beating Benavidez decrease significantly. Canelo is the older fighter with a lot of mileage on his body. It's only natural for him to slow down and be on a decline as the years go by. And some people already think that Canelo is leaving his peak prime. Benavidez is the younger fighter in his prime, and he still hasn't reached that peak prime yet. The more experience that he gets, the more dangerous he'll become. And if Canelo waits too long, we might see a reenactment of Oscar De La Hoya and Julio Cesar Chavez, and you know what happened with that fight. But if Canelo is fighting Bivol next, then Benavidez will have to find an opponent. The two most likely opponents are Demetrius Andrade and David Morrell Jr., and those two fights are good fights. I believe that Benavidez could beat both of those guys, and getting a win over either one of those guys will definitely increase the clout of Benavidez and increase the demand for a Canelo fight. However, I do believe that David Morrell does have the skills, style, and natural attributes to upset Benavidez, and there's a strong chance that we'll get that fight next because the WBA president wants to make that fight happen. But who knows, this is boxing, anything can happen. Thank you for tuning in with Ayo Boxing from Adiba. Hit like and subscribe, and more content's coming your way.